You would be amazed at what people say when they think nobody important is listening, especially when the person standing right next to them is holding a toilet brush and wearing a shapeless gray uniform. I have learned more about the dirty secrets of this company in 3 days of scrubbing floors than the board of directors has learned in 3 years of looking at spreadsheets. They call it being invisible, but I call it being the smartest person in the room. My name is Maya, and right now to the high rollers at Obsidian Capital, I am just the help. I am the woman who empties the trash bins that smell like stale coffee and regret. I am the one who wipes the fingerprints off the glass doors that separate the millionaires from the people who actually do the work. But what none of them know is that I am not actually here for the minimum wage. I am here because I own the place. Well, almost. 3 weeks ago, the board hired me as the new CEO to save this sinking ship. They saw my resume, my track record of turning failing tech giants into gold mines, and they begged me to take the job. But I told them I had one condition. I told them I wanted a month to prepare before I stepped into the spotlight. I told them I needed to handle some personal business. But that was a lie. I did not want to walk in there and get the sanitized tour. I did not want the red carpet rolled out where everyone is on their best behavior and smiling like sharks. I wanted to see the rot. I wanted to see who was actually working and who was just stealing oxygen. So I bought a gray jumpsuit, tied my hair back in a messy bun, and got hired as the night shift cleaner. It is crazy how a uniform changes everything. When I wear my Armani suit, men hold doors open for me and nervous interns try to remember my coffee order. When I wear this gray polyester sack, people literally step on me. Yesterday, a VP named Brad stepped right on my foot while he was rushing to the elevator. He did not say sorry. He did not even look down. He just checked his Rolex and yelled at his assistant on the phone. That moment told me everything I needed to know about Brad. And today, Brad is gonna have a very bad day. I pushed my heavy cleaning cart down the long hallway of the 42nd floor. The wheels squeaked, a rhythmic and annoying sound that echoed against the marble walls. I could fix it, but I liked the noise. It was a test. I wanted to see who would get annoyed and who would ask if I needed help. So far, nobody had offered to help. The office was buzzing. It was barely 9 in the morning, but the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rumors were flying around that the new CEO was supposed to arrive today or tomorrow. Everyone was on edge, trying to look busy, trying to look important. I kept my head down and pushed my cart toward the executive break room. This was the heart of the beast. This was where the real gossip happened. I rolled the cart in and started spraying the counter with lemon disinfectant. The smell was sharp, stinging my nose. 2 men were standing by the fancy espresso machine, the kind that costs more than my first car. One of them was Brad, the guy who stepped on me. The other was a man I recognized from the personnel files as Greg, the CFO. Greg looked nervous. He was sweating through his dress shirt. "You gotta be kidding me," Greg said, his voice shaking a little. "Are you sure the numbers are gonna hold up? If this new CEO digs too deep, we are toast." Brad laughed, a loud, arrogant bark of a sound. He leaned back against the counter, sipping his espresso like he owned the world. "Relax, buddy. She is just a woman. Probably got the job because of some diversity quota. I will dazzle her with a few charts, buy her a nice lunch, and she will be eating out of my hand. She is not gonna look at the expense reports from last quarter. Nobody looks at those." I scrubbed a coffee stain on the counter harder than I needed to. My knuckles turned white. Brad was stealing from the company. I suspected it before, but hearing him say it out loud was different. He was padding the expense reports, probably funneling money into his own pocket, while the company was laying off hard-working staff in the warehouse. Greg did not look convinced. "I do not know, Brad. I heard she is a shark. They say she fired half the executive board at her last company on the first day." Brad waved his hand dismissively. "Urban legends. Look, even if she asks questions, who is she gonna believe? Us, the guys who have been running this place for a decade, or some lower-level snitch? We are untouchable, Greg. We are the golden boys." He crumpled up a sugar packet and tossed it toward the trash can. He missed. The wrapper landed right next to my shoe. Brad looked at the wrapper, then looked at me. He snapped his fingers. "Hey, you, cleaning lady." I froze. I counted to 3 in my head to stop myself from punching him in the throat. I slowly looked up, keeping my face blank, my eyes dull. I had practiced this look in the mirror. It was the look of someone who has given up on fighting back. "Yes, sir?" I said, making my voice soft and small. You missed a spot, he said, pointing at the wrapper he had just thrown on the floor. Pick it up. The disrespect was physical. Felt like a slap. I could feel the heat rising up my neck. I was the one who signed his paychecks. I was the one who could end his career with a single email. But not yet. The trap was not fully set. I bent down, my knees cracking slightly on the hard tile, and picked up the sticky wrapper. I walked over to the trash can and dropped it in. Thank you, sir, I mumbled. Brad didn't even acknowledge me. He turned back to Greg. See, you just gotta know how to handle people. Everyone has their place. I grabbed my spray bottle and moved to the other side of the room, my heart pounding against my ribs like a sledgehammer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip off this gray jumpsuit, reveal the tailored silk blouse underneath, and tell him exactly what his place was. But I had to wait. The board meeting was scheduled for 11 o'clock. That was when the new CEO was supposed to make her grand entrance. I finished cleaning the break room and headed back out into the main bullpen. This area was different. This was where the real work happened. Rows of cubicles stretched out under the fluorescent lights. The carpet here was worn and stained, not like the plush wool in the executive wing. The people here looked tired. They were typing furiously, answering phones, chugging energy drinks. I saw a young guy named Leo sitting at a desk near the copier. Leo was one of the good ones. Over the last few days, I had watched him stay late every single night, fixing mistakes that the managers had made. He looked exhausted. His tie was loose, and he had dark circles under his eyes. I rolled my cart past his desk. He looked up and gave me a tired smile. Hey Martha, he said. I had told them my name was Martha. It sounded harmless. Hey Leo, I said, leaning on my mop handle. You look like you went 10 rounds with a boxer. He chuckled, rubbing his face with his hands. Feels like it. Brad just dumped a 50-page report on my desk. Wants it summarized and formatted by noon for the board meeting. He said if it is not perfect, I should not bother coming in tomorrow. I frowned. That ain't right, Leo. He should be doing his own reports. Leo shrugged, picking up a stack of papers. That is not how it works here, Martha. The big guys play golf and we do the heavy lifting. I just hope this new CEO changes things. I got a baby on the way, you know? I cannot afford to lose this job. But the way they treat us. It is getting hard to breathe. My grip tightened on the mop. This was why I was doing this. For Leo. For the hundreds of employees who were scared to speak up because they had rent to pay and families to feed. Guys like Brad thought they were the engine of the company, but they were just the hood ornament. Leo was the engine. Don't you worry, Leo, I said, my voice dropping a little lower, losing some of the fake accent I had been using. I got a feeling things are gonna change around here real soon. Like today. He looked at me, a little confused by the confidence in my voice. I hope you are right, Martha. Hey, you want half a bagel? I ain't gonna eat it all. He was offering me his food. This kid was terrified of losing his job, probably broke, and he was offering the cleaning lady his lunch. That broke my heart and glued it back together at the same time. No thanks, honey, I said. You eat. You need the strength. I pushed my cart away before he could see the tears welling up in my eyes. I had to get to the boardroom. I had to set the stage. The boardroom at Obsidian Capital was a masterpiece of intimidation. It was a massive glass box floating in the center of the top floor. The table was made of solid mahogany, long enough to land a plane on. The chairs were black leather, high-backed, and looked like thrones. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, overlooking the entire city skyline. It was a room designed to make you feel like a god. I rolled my cart inside. The meeting was in 20 minutes. The assistants had already set out the water bottles and the heavy binders. I started wiping down the table, making sure every inch of wood gleamed. As I worked, the door opened and the executives started trickling in. They were laughing, chatting about their weekends, about their boats, about their mistresses. They completely ignored me. I was just part of the furniture. Brad walked in with Greg and a woman named Jessica. Jessica was the VP of marketing. She was sharp, mean, and had a smile that did not reach her eyes. She was wearing a suit that probably cost more than Leo made in a year. Is everything ready for the Queen Bee? Jessica asked, throwing her expensive leather portfolio onto the table. Brad snorted. She is not here yet. My assistant said her flight got delayed or something. We might be waiting a while. which is good, gives us time to get our story straight on the budget cuts. Budget cuts. My ears perked up. I moved closer, pretending to dust the back of the chairman's seat at the head of the table. We are still going with the narrative that the warehouse staff is redundant? Jessica asked, checking her makeup in a small compact mirror. Yeah, Brad said. We cut 40% of the workforce downstairs, and that frees up enough cash for the executive bonuses this quarter. If the new CEO asks, we just say it is an efficiency restructuring. She will love that buzzword. CEOs love efficiency. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. They were planning to fire 40% of the staff, 40% of the layoffs, just so they could get a fatter check. I accidentally bumped the cleaning cart against the wall. The sound was loud in the quiet room. All three of them turned to look at me. The silence was heavy. Jesus, Brad snapped. Can you not be clumsy for 5 minutes? We are trying to have a serious conversation here. Jessica looked at me with pure disgust. Why is she still in here? The meeting starts in 10 minutes. Get her out. Smells like bleach. I looked at them. I looked at their smug faces, their perfect hair, their soulless eyes. They had no idea who was standing in front of them. They saw a uniform. They saw a nobody. I am just finishing up, ma'am, I said, keeping my head down. Just want to make sure everything is perfect for the new boss. Yeah, well, hurry it up, Brad said, waving his hand as if shooing a fly. And take that trash cart with you. It is an eyesore. I nodded slowly. I will, sir. I will take out all the trash. I pushed the cart toward the corner of the room, but I did not leave. I parked it right there in the shadows next to a potted plant. What are you doing? Greg asked, squinting at me. You gotta go. I just need to fix a wheel, I lied. It is stuck. I cannot move it. Brad rolled his eyes. Unbelievable. We have a billion-dollar company and we cannot even afford carts that work. Fine. Just stay in the corner and do not breathe. When the CEO gets here, you disappear. Got it? I got it, I said. The room started to fill up. More suits. More ties. More arrogance. There were about 12 of them in total. The board of directors and the top executives. They took their seats, checking their phones, pouring water, joking around. The seat at the head of the table remained empty. My seat. I stood in the corner, clutching my spray bottle like a weapon. My heart was hammering a rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. This was it. This was the moment. The clock on the wall ticked closer to 11. So Brad said loudly, addressing the room. Since our new fearless leader is late, maybe we should just get started? I know we are all busy people. Jessica nodded. I agree. We can just fill her in when she arrives. If she arrives. Maybe she got cold feet. Laughter rippled around the table. Yeah, Greg added, loosening his tie. Probably realized she is out of her league. Dealing with us is not child's play. I watched them. I watched them laugh at me. I watched them underestimate me. And a calm feeling washed over me. It was the calm before the storm. It was the feeling a predator gets right before it strikes. I reached into the front pocket of my jumpsuit. My fingers brushed against the ID badge I had been hiding for 3 weeks. The one that said CEO in bold letters. I took a deep breath. The smell of lemon disinfectant filled my lungs. It was time to clean house. I let go of the cart. I stepped out of the shadows. My rubber-soled shoes were silent on the carpet. Excuse me, I said. My voice was not soft anymore. It was not the voice of Martha the cleaner. It was the voice that had commanded boardrooms in New York, London, and Tokyo. It was a voice of steel. Brad turned around in his chair, looking annoyed. I told you to stay in the corner. What do you want? An autograph? I kept walking. I walked past the potted plant. I walked past the lower end of the table where the junior VPs sat. I said, excuse me, I repeated louder this time. The conversation in the room died down. People were looking at me, confused. Why was the cleaning lady walking toward the head of the table? Brad stood up. His face was turning red. Are you deaf? Get out. Security. Someone call security. I ignored him. I walked right past him. I could smell his fear now underneath the cologne. I walked all the way to the head of the table. To the empty leather chair. The throne. I stood behind it. I placed my hands on the back of the chair. The leather felt cool under my palms. The room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Brad looked like he was having a stroke. Jessica's mouth was hanging open. What do you think you are doing? Brad whispered, his voice trembling with rage. That is the CEO's chair. You are going to be fired so fast your head will spin. I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't blink. You are right, Brad, I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. Someone is getting fired today. But it ain't gonna be me. I slowly reached up to my messy bun and pulled the hair tie out. My dark hair cascaded down my shoulders. I reached for the zipper of my gray jumpsuit. The sound of the zipper sliding down was the loudest noise in the world. Zip. I shrugged the heavy gray fabric off my shoulders. It fell to the floor in a heap, revealing the tailored navy blue power suit I was wearing underneath. It was sharp, expensive, and commanded respect. I adjusted my silk collar. I pulled the ID badge from my pocket and slammed it onto the mahogany table. Clack. The name Maya Sterling, CEO, stared up at them. Brad's face went from red to ghost white in a split second. He looked at the badge, then at me, then back at the badge. He slumped back into his chair as if his legs had stopped working. No, he whispered. That is impossible. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. Hello, everyone, I said, leaning forward, resting my knuckles on the table. My name is Maya Sterling, and we have a lot to talk about. Specifically about that trash you wanted me to take out. I pointed a manicured finger directly at Brad. I think I will start with you. The shock in the room was electric. It vibrated in the air. Lower-level staff who had been standing by the doors, the assistants and the interns, gasped. I saw a few of them cover their mouths. I saw a smile creep onto the face of a young assistant in the back. But I was not done. I did not sit down. I walked over to my cleaning cart in the corner. Everyone's eyes followed me. They were hypnotized. I grabbed a stack of papers from the bottom shelf of the cart. The papers were crumpled, stained with coffee, and taped together. They were the documents I had fished out of the trash. The evidence of the embezzlement. The proof of the fake budget cuts. I walked back to the table and tossed the stack of dirty papers right in front of Greg. Care to explain these, Greg? I asked. Since you were so worried about the numbers holding up? Greg looked like he was going to be sick. He stammered, unable to form words. And you, Jessica, I said, turning to her. You mentioned efficiency. You think cutting 40% of the staff is efficient? I think cutting 3 bloated executive salaries is a lot more efficient. Don't you? Jessica shrank in her seat. She looked small. I looked around the table. The arrogance was gone. The laughter was gone. All that was left was fear. I spent the last 3 weeks scrubbing your toilets, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I heard every joke. I saw every eye roll. I felt every time you looked right through me. You treated me like I was nothing because you thought I had no power. But here is the lesson you are going to learn today. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Respect is not something you give only to the people who sign your checks. It is something you give to everyone. And since you guys forgot that, I am here to remind you. I sat down in the big leather chair. I spun it slightly so I could face Brad directly. Now I said, who wants to tell me why Leo downstairs is doing your job for you, Brad? Or should I call him up here so he can take your seat? The room erupted into chaos. Executives started shouting over each other, trying to defend themselves, trying to apologize. Brad was sweating bullets. But I just sat there, calm and collected, with my cleaning cart still standing in the corner behind me. It was my trophy. It was my symbol. And I was just getting started. Silence. I slammed my hand on the table. The heavywood groaned under the impact. The chaotic shouting died instantly. The executives froze, looking like deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. They were not used to being yelled at. They were used to doing the yelling. I leaned back in the leather chair, crossing my legs. I took a slow sip from the glass of water that had been poured for the absent CEO. Tasted like victory. You want to know how I found out about the offshore accounts, Greg? I asked, my voice calm but sharp as a razor. Greg wiped sweat from his forehead with a shaking hand. I do not know what you are talking about. Those are legitimate business expenses. I laughed. It was a cold sound. No, they ain't. Last Tuesday, while I was emptying your shredder, you were on the speakerphone with your accountant. You were talking about how to hide the bonus payout so the IRS would not flag them. You said, and I quote, just bury it in the warehouse maintenance fund. Nobody looks at that. The color drained from his face. He looked at his colleagues for support, but they were all staring at the table, trying to make themselves invisible. And you, Jessica, I continued, swiveling the chair toward her. You were bragging to your assistant that you have not read a single marketing report in 6 months. You said you just copy the data from last year and change the dates. You called our customers mindless sheep, who would buy anything if we made the packaging shiny enough. Jessica opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. She snapped her compact mirror shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. But Brad, I said, turning my attention back to the man who had treated me like dirt on his shoe. You are the special one. Brad tried to muster up some of his old arrogance. He straightened his tie, though his hands were trembling. Look, Miss Sterling. We got off on the wrong foot. I was under a lot of stress. You know how it is. The market is volatile. I was just blowing off steam. We can work this out. We are a team. A team? I repeated. You stepped on my foot yesterday and did not even apologize. You threw trash at me this morning like I was a basketball hoop. You think that is how a teammate acts? I stood up again. The movement made everyone flinch. I walked over to the intercom system on the wall. I pressed the button for the main reception. Send Leo from the analytics department up to the boardroom immediately, I said. Brad's eyes widened. Why are you calling him? He is a nobody. He is the guy who does your job, Brad, I said. And he is about to get a promotion. While we waited, the silence in the room was suffocating. The air conditioning hummed, but the executives were sweating. I walked back to my cleaning cart. I picked up a bottle of glass cleaner and a rag. I started wiping down the whiteboard at the front of the room, erasing the fake projections Brad had drawn up. The absurdity of the image, the CEO in a tailored suit cleaning a whiteboard, was not lost on them. But nobody dared to laugh. The door creaked open a few minutes later. Leo stood there. He looked terrified. He was holding a stack of papers, his tie still loose, his eyes darting around the room. He saw the executives sitting in silence. He saw me standing at the head of the table. He blinked. Martha. Come in, Leo, I said, smiling warmly. And my name is actually Maya. But you can call me boss. Leo walked into the room slowly, like he was walking into a trap. He looked at Brad, then at me. I do not understand. Is this a joke? I pulled out the chair next to mine. The chair that belonged to Brad. Sit down, Leo, I commanded. Leo froze. That is Mr. Henderson's seat. Not anymore, I said. I looked at Brad. Get up. Brad stayed seated, gripping the armrests. You cannot do this. I have a contract. I have tenure. You cannot just replace me with some kid from the basement. I walked over to him. I leaned down so my face was inches from his. I own 51% of this company, Brad. I can replace you with a golden retriever if I want to. But I am replacing you with the man whose work you have been stealing for 2 years. Now get up before I have security drag you out. Brad looked at the door. 2 burly security guards were already standing there, waiting for my signal. I had texted them 5 minutes ago. Brad stood up. He looked small. He looked defeated. He grabbed his phone and his briefcase. This is a mistake, he spat. You will run this company into the ground. You do not know how the real world works. I gestured to the door. I know that in the real world you do not treat people like garbage just because you think they cannot fight back. Goodbye, Brad. The guard stepped forward and escorted him out. Greg and Jessica followed, their heads hung low. They knew their turn was coming next. I did not even have to say the words. They gathered their things and shuffled out behind Brad, stripping the room of its toxicity in less than 2 minutes. The door closed. The room felt lighter. The remaining executives, the ones who had kept their heads down, the ones who had actually been working while the others played golf, looked at me with a mixture of fear and awe. I turned to Leo. He was still standing, staring at the empty leather chair. Sit, I said gently. Leo sat. He looked at the mahogany table, then up at me. You are really the CEO? I am, I said. And you are the new VP of Operations. I saw the report you did for Brad. It was brilliant. You identified the supply chain issues we have been having for months. Brad was going to bury it because it made him look bad. We are going to implement your plan starting tomorrow. Leo's jaw dropped. VP? But I am just a junior analyst. I have a baby coming. I do not have a suit like this. I laughed. We will get you a suit, Leo. And a raise. A big one. I looked around the table at the survivors. The atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer a club for the elite. It was a workplace again. Listen up, I said, addressing the room. Things are going to be different from now on. No more 3-hour lunches. No more padding expense reports. And absolutely no more treating the support staff like they are invisible. I pointed to the cleaning cart still parked in the corner. That cart stays there, I said. The VP of HR, a woman named Karen who had actually been kind to me when I was cleaning her office, raised her hand tentatively. Stays there? You mean in the boardroom? Yes, I said. Stays right there. Every time we have a meeting, every time we make a decision about budgets or layoffs or bonuses, I want you to look at that cart. I want you to remember that the people who clean this building, the people who answer the phones, the people who pack the boxes in the warehouse, they are the backbone of this company. If we fail them, we fail ourselves. I walked over to the cart one last time. I ran my hand over the gray plastic handle. It was cheap and scratched, but it felt more valuable than the mahogany table. I pulled out the name tag I had worn for 3 weeks. The one that said Martha Cleaning Staff. I placed it in the center of the table. This is the most important seat at the table, I said. Never forget that. I looked at Leo. He was smiling. It was the first time I had seen him smile without looking exhausted. Ready to get to work? I asked him. He nodded, straightening his back. He looked like a VP now. Ready, boss. I checked my watch. It was barely noon. I had fired the 3 biggest problems in the company, promoted a hidden gem, and completely changed the corporate culture. Not bad for a morning's work. But there was one last thing I had to do. I walked out of the boardroom, leaving the executives to digest the new reality. I walked down the hall, past the stunned assistants who were whispering furiously. I took the elevator down to the lobby. The receptionist, a young girl named Sarah, looked up as I approached. She did not recognize me at first in the suit. Then her eyes went wide. Martha, she gasped. I smiled. It is Maya, actually. But yes. She looked at my suit, then at the security guards flanking the entrance who were now standing at attention for me. I heard rumors, she whispered. Is it true? Are you really the owner? I leaned over the desk. It is true, Sarah. And by the way, those ergonomically designed chairs you requested 3 months ago? The ones Brad denied because he said they were too expensive? She nodded. I ordered them this morning, I said. They will be here on Monday. Tears welled up in her eyes. Thank you. My back has been killing me. I winked at her. Take care of your back, Sarah. We need you. I walked out the revolving doors and onto the busy street. The sun was shining. The city noise washed over me. Honking taxis, shouting vendors, the rhythm of the hustle. People walked past me, rushing to their meetings, glued to their phones. They saw a woman in a power suit and they stepped out of my way. They gave me respect because of the clothes I wore. Because of the way I walked. But I knew the truth now. I knew that the woman in the gray jumpsuit was just as powerful, just as smart, and just as worthy of respect as the woman in the Armani suit. I took a deep breath of the city air. It smelled like exhaust and potential. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Leo. Boss, we just found Brad's hidden files on the server. You're gonna want to see this. Also thanks. For the bagel offer. And for the job. I typed back, you earned it. Order lunch for the team. On the company card. I put the phone away and hailed a cab. The driver pulled up. A grumpy-looking guy with a cigar hanging out of his mouth. He looked me up and down. Where to, lady? He grunted. I smiled. Not at him, but at the world. Take me to the warehouse, I said. I have some people I need to meet. He raised an eyebrow. The warehouse? Dressed like that? You gonna get dirty? I looked down at my pristine navy suit. I thought about the gray jumpsuit hanging in my office closet. I thought about the lemon disinfectant and the squeaky cart. Getting dirty is the only way to get things clean, I said. He shrugged. It is your dime, lady. As the cab pulled away into traffic, I looked back at the obsidian glass tower of my building. High up on the top floor, I knew the board was scrambling. I knew the culture was shifting. I knew that tomorrow, when the cleaners arrived for the night shift, they would be greeted with coffee and donuts instead of silence. They call it a Cinderella story. From rags to riches. But that ain't right. I did not need a prince to save me. I did not need a magic wand. I just needed to see the truth that everyone else was too arrogant to look at. I was the corporate Cinderella, but I did not leave a glass slipper behind. I left a cleaning cart, and that was a whole lot stronger. The cab turned the corner, and the building disappeared from view. But the work, the real work, that was just beginning. And I was ready to get my hands dirty.